Hello, can you all hear me? Give me a thumbs up, I'll say something. Yeah, okay, brilliant. So I've got my laptop over there so I can see the chat, and my webcam's there, and my monitor's here, so I won't be looking at the webcam all the time. I'm gonna plug my headphones in. Let me just see actually. I just want to make sure the sound doesn't come out my speakers. Yeah, it does, okay. I'm gonna plug my headphones in. Okay, so you can hear me, and can you hear this? Does that come through okay? Yep, yep, sine tones, yep. Okay, brilliant. Right, so what I'm going to start off doing is I've got a French horn session I need to edit. So I figured I'd start with that, and then if you just ask questions, and we'll probably end up talking about something completely different by the end of it. At least I hope it will, because it's quite tedious editing samples. So we can see Reaper. Yep, see Reaper. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start off. Let's get rid of that synthesizer. We don't need that. Now I'm on a 2K monitor, so things might look a bit small if you're on a smaller resolution screen. So if you need me to go into detail about anything, just let me know, and I'll try and do a zoom in or something like that. Let's start. So I'm going to pull in some samples first of all. I'm just going to share the whole screen, because at the moment I'm just sharing the window. So now I've got the whole screen shared. I'm going to pull in some French horn samples. So I've already set up the project in Reaper. This is just a template that I've set up already. And French horn, okay. So these were recorded remotely. Basically I sit here at my computer, I have Skype open, and I have another bit of software open to stream the audio from the studio, and they were recorded by 4 Music, which is a company based in Bulgaria. They're the guys who do all the Strezov sampling stuff, and we recorded this French horn sometime earlier this year, and I haven't edited it yet. I've got all the brass instruments to edit. We've got bass trombone, piccolo trumpet, 2 trombones, a tuba, 2 French horns, and 2 trumpets. So I haven't done any of those yet because I've been working on a woodwind library. So still only seeing the same window. Oh, I know. I've got to click this button. Should transition in a second. Just watch the stream. Yep, okay. Right, so I'll just go back to this. So basically I've just got a folder with all my sessions in here. Those are the instruments I was just reading out a moment ago. And I'm going to the French horn 2 folder. I've got my Reaper session here, which is what's open. And these are all the raw files that I got from the studio. These are all the files that were sent to me. And the file names vary a bit with the different sessions, I've noticed. So these ones are, let's have a look, BDC. So these are the Decca samples, I think, or there might be the close mic. Let me have a look. Yeah, these are the Decca center mics. So I'll just drag those over. So this is how I start off. I have my session open, and I'm going to drag these to where I've set up the Decker center. So that's this track here. And then I've got Decker left and Decker right. So I'm just going to do the same thing for those channels. And Reaper seems to be quite clever, and it keeps them all aligned, so I don't have to check the names or anything. They generally, yeah, it seems to pull them in the right order no matter which one I click on when I drag them in. So that's quite good. Yeah. And now I'll drag in the right ones. And then I'm just going to do exactly the same for the hall mics and the close mics. Actually, there's only one close mic, it's a mono channel. So if I go too fast at any point, just let me know, and I'm happy to go over stuff in more detail or go more slowly. A lot of this stuff I've done it many times, so it just sort of is muscle memory, so I'm not thinking so much about what I'm clicking, so I might miss something out. Okay, so that's the basic session set up. I'm just gonna hit Control S there to save. Question: is this Reaper native Linux version or Windows version in Wine? I hope Cubase does that. Yes, it's the native Linux version. I haven't, well, I tried the Wine version about a year ago very briefly, but even back then the Linux version was pretty stable. I think I might have had to compile a library or something, but now it's just, you can just download it. It seems to be perfectly stable. There has been one or two bugs that I've noticed. I reported one the other day and it was fixed within a few hours, but it wasn't anything sort of major. It was to do with it was a scripting thing, so it wasn't anything that would affect most people. What was the other question? Oh, Cubase. I don't think Cubase will do this. I haven't used Cubase since Cubase 5. So it may do. Cubase 5 didn't do this, not as nicely anyway. I started off editing samples in Cubase, but once I got into Reaper and I got into scripting and downloading other people's scripts, it just made things so much easier. So, right, the next stage is I use a script. So I'm going to highlight all of these samples. I'll explain, I'll just back up a second. What I want to do is I want to group the samples, or group the channels, shall I say. So, like, all of these are independent at the moment. If I move, well, there would be if I didn't have that turned on. Okay, all of them are independent. If I move this one, the other mics don't move. They're not locked together. So what I could do is I could highlight them and press G to group them. You can also do it by right-clicking and going to Group and selecting Group Items. And that means if I move one, the others that are grouped are going to be locked to it. So that's what you want with multi-mic samples, so they don't go out of phase with each other. But I've got a lot of samples here, so it won't be so bad if it was just one or two files, but I don't know how many files are here, but it's a lot, and I don't want to have to highlight each block and press G and highlight the next one and press G. It's a lot of work. But there's a script which I think it's in the extensions. If you've installed Repack and go into the packages, I think it's in here. Wait for that to load. And it's called Group Across Tracks. It might be on the Reaper forum somewhere. I've had it for years, so I'm not sure where I got it from. Let's see, is it there? Group selected items according to their order in selection per track. I think that's the one. So basically what that does, I've got it down here on a toolbar, custom toolbar, and I just call it Group Across Tracks, and I click that and now they're all nicely grouped in their columns. And usually I have ripple editing enabled, so I can shift them around like that as well, which is what you saw earlier. I've turned that off again now. Just looking for any questions. Okay. What's your recommendation on? Oh, okay, sample name. Yeah. Recommendation on sample names, mics, repetitions, etc. Okay, to demonstrate that, I'm just going to open another session so you can see exactly what I've done. Let's open. It varies slightly between projects, but this is a bad example because that's not the file I wanted. Let's just open it in here. So I've been working on a woodwind library for the past year and a half, something like that. So these are the ones I've been editing most recently. Let's open up the clarinets. So this is a completed session, and if we just we'll go along to where I've got the sustain samples. So again, we've got close mic, decker mic, hall mic, and the names are applied to the individual items. So you can see here I've got sustain, close, 72, that's the MIDI note number, and then dynamic 1. I actually tend to, even when there's only one round robin, I usually put the round robin number afterwards. I appear not to have done it here, but if I go to the staccatos, they will definitely have it. So I'll open the properties window, it might be easier to see. So we've got staccato, close, 71, just happen to pick the same note number there. Dynamic 1 underscore round robin 2, RR2. And each one's basically the same, except this one's decker and that one's hall. So I have the articulation name, then the mic name, then the MIDI note number, then the dynamic, and then the round robin. And I usually start the round robin numbering from 1, but sometimes you might want to start it from 0. I used to start it from 0, but now that I've switched to highs, I number it from 1 because the auto mapper for round robin groups in highs starts at 1. Like it starts at group 1, it doesn't start at group 0. So I number from 1. And with the dynamics, again, I use numbers rather than putting like piano, fortissimo, or whatever. I use numbers so that I know which order they're going to be in when I'm doing the dynamic layer crossfades. So, does that answer your question? I think I covered everything there. So I'm just going back to the French horn session, but please ask more questions. It's good, it stops me having to do this incredibly tedious editing. Sample editing is so boring. Okay, now sometimes at this stage I will highlight everything and normalize it to a common gain, which basically means it finds the loudest thing, which is going to be these samples here, and just bumps everything up until the loudest thing reaches 0 dB. But I think this thing looks like it might be clipping actually. So if I do that, I don't think there's going to be much change anywhere. No, it didn't do anything. So these won't be normalized until later on. Although these, yeah, I'll leave them as they are for now. So the next stage is noise removal, and usually it does vary a bit, but usually I do noise removal, then I'll export these so I'm just dealing with 3 channels instead of 6 channels. So I'll then export them to the close, will be a mono file, the decker will be a stereo file with the 3 channels combined, and the hall will be a stereo file. And I find that easier to work with when I actually come to cutting the samples. So I do noise removal, and I'll sometimes do some tuning in this stage, and I am going to today. And with the woodwinds, I decided to do the tuning, or at least most of the tuning, in the next stage. I basically did manual tuning for the woodwinds, and it took forever. So I've come up with it's actually a system I've used previously, but not quite to this extreme, for auto tuning using retune. Here, just a little bit of audio. Do you mean I'm not sure what you mean. Are you unable to hear the microphone? How does this mic sound, by the way? I'm just using a little clip-on thing. Actually, my headphone cable might be bashing into that. I'll put it behind my head. But is this audio okay? I've got like a denoiser thing on it as well, so I don't know if that's adding any artifacts. But just let me know. Audio is fine. Good. Now, yeah, this tuning thing I've come up with. Basically, I had a problem with tuning, and you may have seen I've been asking on the forums and on Facebook and stuff how other people do it, and most people just say use Melodyne. And I've used Melodyne in the past. It doesn't fit into my workflow that well, so I don't really like using it. And I've used Auto-Tune, like the proper Auto-Tune, but I didn't find that was that great. Anyway, I like Retune. I find a lot of, or several of the algorithms in Retune add artifacts, but the elastic efficient seems to be great. I don't use the soloist one or the pro one. I find they add artifacts, but the efficient one, I have hardly any problems with it. Occasionally I'll get artifacts, and in those cases I will go in instead and manually tune using an envelope, but the rest of the time it's fine. But the main problem I've had is if you're working with multi-mic samples and you tune them all independently, then they go out of phase with each other, which messes things up, which is why a lot of people use Melodyne, because you can do multi-mic sampling, multi-mic tuning within it. But anyway, I found a solution, I think. It's worked in the past, so I've set up a more complicated version here, which I'm hoping I've set up right. But basically, Retune only tunes based on what comes in on the first channel, because it's a stereo effect. If I open it again, and we'll have a look at the in-out, it's actually got 4 ins, and I don't know why, because the 3 and 4 don't do anything. But it takes what comes in on channel 1 and tunes both channels to the input of channel 1. And I've just realized that should only be output in channel 2. And then it outputs channels 1 and 2. But if you set it up where you're sending the close mic in on channel 1, and then you can send, say, the Decca center on channel 2, it'll tune the Decca to the sort of keeping in phase with the close mics. And then as long as you only take the second channel output, you'll just get the Decca back out. So that's how this is set up. Except that one wasn't. I'm just going to check the other one now just to make sure that I've got that right. Oh, maybe I do put out 1 and 2. I guess it doesn't matter since I've got to send with just channel 2 anyway, so I'm sure it's fine. But I made a little project to sort of demonstrate that more clearly, and also to reassure myself that I'd got it the right way around. So let me just see if I can find that. Sounds good. Oh, hear a little bit of the sample. Oh yeah, I'll play some of the samples. What is this microphone? Let's have a look. It's a Speedlink. I think it was about £20 on Amazon. I've had loads of these little clip-on mics, and this has been the best one I've found so far. I got this one about 5 or 6 years ago. Okay, so this is my test project. So I'm just going to explain how I've routed this. I'll start here actually. So I've just got, these are sine waves again, just using that same synthesizer. So this one is just playing a G, I think it's G3. This one is playing a D sharp. And then they don't go into this folder track. I've actually turned the master send off, so this track is just there as a folder. It doesn't have any functionality in the flow of the signal. And these guys are both sent to this retune track, and this channel, the one with the G on it, goes in to the first input on retune, and this one with the D on it goes into the second input. Okay, and if I open retune, So I'm going to hit play, and what you'll see, this is retune on this retune track. You should just see the G, because retune only reads the first channel. Okay. Now on the output, this is after it's been tuned, we're going to see the D sharp, but it's going to be affected slightly by the G, because retune is still going through retune, and retune is going to try and tune it to the G. It doesn't do a very good job because they're so such strong signals and they're so far apart, but it should demonstrate it. You should see like the D just sort of wavering a bit. Let's just increase that. Or maybe not increase it. Well, it didn't waver very much. But if we go in the correction thing, oh no, not that one. You'll see it trying to pull the channel down. Oh, hang on, that's why I didn't put on pitch correction. There we go. So it's trying to pull the D to the G, but it's only outputting the second channel in the end anyway. So it just means I can get phase correct, or almost phase correct, tuning across multiple mic positions. And I can do it for, well, I've got 6 channels set up in the other one, so I think I can do it for pretty much any number of channels. In the past, I've only done it for about 2 or 3 channels, which is why I wasn't quite sure if I'd set it up correctly, because, well, I'll show you the routing for it. Okay, I've got a question here. I'll come back to this routing in a minute. Some sample libraries say they don't normalize samples. I'm curious what pros and cons of normalization are. I always thought using normalization would destroy natural dynamics. Yeah, I've been back and forth with this a few times, and then there was a couple of discussions on VI control, and I came to the conclusion that it was better to normalize. So first reason was Chris Hines said it was good, so that's got to be a good reason. And then what I realized was that it doesn't destroy the dynamic of an individual sample, but it does destroy the relation between them. So if you've got a forte sample and a piano sample, it's going to make them both the same volume. But that's easily countered, because all you have to do is add a volume curve that goes along with the dynamic crossfade in when you put it into contact or highs or UV or whatever your sequencer is, sampler is. So it's not such a big deal with the dynamics, but what it does do, and this is the main reason I use it, is the actual crossfades themselves are much smoother, because you're crossfading 2 samples that are the same volume as each other. So you get less chorusing, and it provides much smoother dynamics. I've tried it both ways, and I did put a demo, I think, on VI Control somewhere in some old post comparing both approaches, and in that demo I thought that the normalized samples, the crossfades were smoother. But you can do it either way, but I prefer to normalize. Oh, the other reason is I found out if you're normalizing and then you bring them down, when you render them, you're going to render them as 16-bit. You get, what is it, something to do with, you get more bits of data. I can't remember how it works, but you get high quality audio or something at 16-bit. You get less noise, something like that. Christoph, the developer of Highs, actually put a good explanation of it on his blog website. If I find a link for it, I'll post it somewhere. But it basically is something to do with when you bring 24-bit down to 16-bit, you're basically losing the noise portion, the lower end of the audio. So if you bump the volume up higher, you're going to get less noise in your 16-bit sample. Something like that. Yeah. Okay, so right, this routing. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of complicated, but we've got a lot of folder tracks here. So it's sort of split into three sections. So I've got the audio, which is from this one here that says audio. Let's make that capital so we can see it. So audio all the way down. So these are just the raw samples. And then this is the close mic, and this is routed to each of these retune tracks. So we've got 6 of those, and the close mic comes in to all of those on channel 1. Except on the first one, it goes to both channels because that is for tuning the close mic. But on the rest of them, it's just channel 1. And then these other ones, they go into a corresponding retune track. So this one goes to the second one, and this goes in on channel 2. And same for the hall mics, and they go in on 5 and 6. So what comes out of here on this folder, which contains all the retune tracks, this is a 6-track, 6-channel track where all of those come in, but it doesn't actually have a master send, so it doesn't put out any audio directly. The audio goes through these sends that I've added, and these go to these 3 tracks at the top, which are just close, Decca and hall. And if we have a look at close, that's just one audio channel, so just 1-to-1. The Decca, so this goes into the Decca track on the left channel. This goes into the Decca track, and this goes on the right channel because that's coming from the left. And this one goes in on both channels because that's coming from the center channel, unless I've done that wrong and that's actually the right channel, which is quite likely. Yeah, I'm going to redo those right now just in case. So let's see. That one goes in there. Okay, so 3. This is where it gets complicated. So this goes to channel 2, channel 2. Okay, so as long as 2. Yeah, okay, let's go to 1. Ah, okay. So that one should be going to 1 and 2. That's it. And then that one's the left. And that one's the right. Okay, that's the right way around now, I think. Okay. So we should hear some audio out if I play this back. And the audio will be rendered through these 3 channels up here. Hopefully it won't be too loud. Sounds alright to me volume wise. Let me know if that's too loud for you and I can turn it down. Level's fine, good. Okay. So I'm just going to test this just to make sure I did this right. So we've got the Decca here. I'm just going to solo the left channel. Yeah, that's coming out on the left over here. Okay, good. So I got that the right way around. The right channel is on the right, and the center channel should come out on both of them. Okay, good. So I fixed that little mistake in my template. Right, so that's that stage. We've got the tuning sorted. These are already set up to auto tune, I think. Yeah, remember to click the button on these ones. Stereo correction should be enabled as well if you're doing that thing that I'm doing with the left and right channels. And these settings I'll change if I'm doing a lower instrument. I'll tend to increase this, and I'll play around with this. I'm not actually sure what the overlap does, but I tend to increase that for lower instruments. It tends to get better detection. And occasionally I'll do it all manually, sort of Melodyne style. So that's that stage. Now the next thing I do is noise removal, and I use Refer. And this isn't noise cleanup, like removing pops and clicks or anything. This is just for the background room noise. And usually I record some room noise if I remember at the end of the session. This sample looks like it might be a room noise sample. Yeah, that's the room noise. Okay, so I've got that for each mic, and I'll basically just go through one at a time. So I've got my let's just bypass all of these. So it's one per mic because the noise will vary between the mics. And I set refer to subtract, and I enable automatically build noise profile. I also changed the analysis floor to -150, but I think that's just what it shows in the grid. I don't think that actually makes any difference to how it works. And then I just hit play and let it build a noise profile. I could do all channels at once actually. I'll do that for the next ones. And yeah, that'll do. And then I uncheck that box, and then we've got the noise profile. So that's nice and easy. And I find refer to be very transparent when doing this kind of thing. So I'll just open up all of these now and get all the other channels done at once. Okay, hit play. See if there's any more questions. Oh, sounded like there was a click in there. I don't want to capture that, so let's just reset these. I think that's all of them reset. That'll do. Yeah, so that click, let's just have a look at that for a second. I'll come back to your crossfade question in a moment. Right, so yeah, so there's a click in here somewhere by the looks of it. So I'm just gonna, there it is. Yeah. So all I've done there is I've magnified the waveform. You just hold shift and then use the up and down cursor keys to magnify the waveform. That isn't actually changing the volume, it's just like a zoom in, zoom out. Something else I really like to use is the spectral, the spectrogram. So we've just got to give it a moment to build the peaks. This little box I'm using here, just go to options, peaks display mode, and then peaks display settings, and that'll give you this little box up here. I should have a pop filter for every time I say peaks. That's not going to come out so well. Right, okay, so this is why I like the spectrogram view, because straight away, even if I sort of zoom out on that magnified view on the waveform, I can see exactly where that click is. And the spectrogram was only added sometime this year, I think, into Reaper, but it is so useful. I use it all the time now, and I use it for finding the points for release samples, for example. So this would be like, you can see straight away where the release of that sample is. Sorry if I just deafened you. I'll turn that down a bit. You see straight away that's where the release sample needs to be, thereabouts. Whereas in this view it's not so clear, and if you zoom out it's especially not clear. And cutting the starts of samples, which I've started to do manually now. I was doing it automatically with highs, but I do it manually now because it's quicker, and I still have to tweak them in highs anyway. So but yeah, you can see straight away there's the start of the sample, whereas in the peaks view it's like, is it here, is it here? It's hard to tell exactly where you want to come in, and I still like to leave a bit of wiggle room for when I'm in the sampler anyway, but it just makes it much easier to find and fix problems and find the points to cut samples if you're doing manual cutting. So what was I doing? Okay, so I removed the noise. You asked about crossfades. So on individual samples, once they're all cut, I'll put a tiny crossfade at the beginning and end. Like, I got this from Simon at Ivy Audio. He showed this in a video. So you select all your samples. I'm just demonstrating here, but once you've got your samples chopped up, and this is like one of the final things you do, you hit F2, which is what I just did to bring up this little window. Hit F2. I think you can also right click and go to item properties. Yeah. And you can do this for multiple items at once. So you'd select all your items, Then you just change this box to 0, change this box to 0 for the fade in and fade out, hit apply, and then you just change the last number to whatever you want, so something like 5, and hit OK. And if you zoom in, see, ignore that one because that one is the default, but here we've got this tiny little crossfade now. But when I put it in the sampler, I use an ADSR envelope anyway with an attack and a release, so that sort of takes care of any little pops or clicks that might occur at the end or the beginning. Oh yeah, on Windows and possibly Mac, I don't know, you have more options in here, and there's things like to reset the item volume and stuff like that. If you've been messing around with the items volume through normalization, you just want to reset it, there's an option in here to do that. I don't have that on my operating system, so I've put a little button on my toolbar, where is it, reset item volume, that does the same thing. Oh, another good thing you can do, if you're doing any tuning manually using pitch envelopes, so here's a pitch envelope for example, you're doing any tuning manually, or you're tuning the whole thing, you can see I've bumped the pitch up there to plus 0.75. If you're doing that kind of thing, you want to have optimize for tonal content enabled. Hey look, there's that volume thing here. That must mean I have to have the... Why is that there now? That's not usually there. Okay. Well, that's the thing I was on about. That's not usually there. But for some reason it's there now. These are the extra options you have on Windows, which I haven't seen on Linux before, but somehow they've appeared. If you know why, please tell me, because I'd like to have them more often. It's always the way, isn't it? When you're demonstrating something, it has to prove you wrong. Okay, so we've got them auto-tuning, we've got them normalized. Well, we're not doing normalization here, but we've got the noise removed. So I just need to label them so I know what samples are what. I'm just going to check for questions again. Use crossfade. Ah, this one. Yep, yeah, that one. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, we need to label them. So over here we've got sustains. I always record the sustains first, then usually I record the staccatos, and then I'll record the flutters and any sort of effects that I'm doing. They usually come last, especially flutters, because you're gonna destroy the musician's lips while you're sampling flutters, so always record those last. Right, so I'm gonna press M to insert a marker. You can also do that by right clicking and selecting insert marker, or pressing Shift M apparently. I'm going to double click that one, and I'm going to call it sustain dynamic 1. Now we're just going to work out where dynamic 2 starts. So how I usually record is we'll start on the lowest note the instrument can play, and we'll just record. We'll do like all the dynamic 1 samples. So we'll record the whole range, and then while we're doing that, I'll make notes of any that I want to do retakes on. And then once we've done it, I send him my list and he does all the retakes. So usually what I end up with is one big audio file followed by several little ones, and that also helps me work out where the next section of recording starts. You're hearing lots of banging, by the way. There's somebody letting off fireworks, so hopefully they'll stop soon. So what I can see here is I have a fairly big chunk there, but these are at the same size, but then a big chunk here. So I'm guessing this is where the second dynamic starts, and I'm just going to check that by just seeing what the note is, seeing if it's the first note of the instrument. So the first one we've got down here is C#1, and here we have C#1. So I'm pretty sure this is where the second dynamic starts for the sustains. And it's been a while since I knew how to spell dynamic 2. It's been a while since I recorded these samples, but I believe for the French horn I decided to record 4 dynamics instead of 3. Usually I do 3 because if you have more than 3, it's usually harder to get a nice crossfade across the whole range, and it becomes a sort of diminishing returns thing. The more dynamics you record, the longer it takes, the more expensive it is. We don't get much back for it. But with the French horns, they have a sort of brassy sound. I think it's called cuivre, something like that. And it's like a sort of a really brassy tone. And I believe I recorded an extra dynamic for that. So there should be 4 dynamics here. Right, so that's dynamic 2. So I'm guessing dynamic 3 starts here. Yep, that's dynamic 3. So I'm going to put in a marker for dynamic 3. Stand dynamic 3. The other thing, sometimes at the end of the recording session, they'll send me a MIDI file. It's recorded in Pro Tools, and they put markers in, like I'm doing now. They put them in as they're recording, and they sometimes send me a MIDI file if I remember to ask them. They'll send me a MIDI file with all the markers, and I can just import that straight into Reaper. Should check actually, see if I got one for this session. No. Okay. So now I've got to find where the next dynamic starts. Might be here. Nope. That'll be it. You hear that really brassy sound. I love that. So that will be that one. Keyboards. Horrible. Okay. Okay, let's see what we've got here. It's more of the same. And then we get onto the staccatos. I think they're celebrating having fireworks left over from the 5th of November when everybody set off fireworks. I think these people have decided it's a weekend, they have spare fireworks, let's set them off. They should save them until New Year. Do crossfade. Recent Reaper update perhaps? It might be a recent update, but it wasn't there 2 minutes ago when I pressed it, and now it's there, so I'm guessing, I don't know, weird. I mean, I don't want to jinx it or anything. I don't want to complain because I've been missing these functions. I mean, the invert phase thing, all of these are very useful things to have. I wonder if I pressed the wrong key by mistake and it enabled something that wasn't there before. I don't know, but I'm happy about it. So we've got the staccatos. So I usually record 4 round robins, expecting to get 3 that are good across all of them. Often you'll get 4 that are good, but you want to make sure that you've got consistency. So let's see how many I recorded here. There's 4. Yeah, so we recorded 4. Same, yeah. But actually, what I tend to only use 1. Like in my woodwind library I've just done, which will be released soon, hopefully by Black Friday. That has, I recorded 4 round robins. I only use 1 because of the way I'm triggering them. It's what the sample modeling guys did actually with their trumpet, where you're just using the attack of the round robin, the attack of the staccato sample and fading it into the sustain, so you get a playable staccato rather than having to key switch to a separate articulation. So it didn't give me much benefit to use the extra round robins, but it would be extra work to map those samples and script it and whatnot. So I decided to just use 1. What am I doing? Staccato. Dynamic 1. Okay, so now we just found the second dynamic, which is probably here. Nope. It's much easier when they send me the MIDI file. Nope. Let's try this one. Actually, we've got quite a lot, so it could be all the way this way. That's not it. That's not it. I've lost them. Okay, so that's the start of 1. I think that's probably dynamic 3 actually. Possible that that's dynamic 2. I'll leave it blank for now. So I'll see what else I've got. Okay, well those are clearly flutter tongues or something, so I'll just shift those out of the way. And whatever this group is, this is dynamic 3. So the first note is the D sharp 2, the one I want. No, D sharp 1 is what I'm after. Told you it's tedious. This stage isn't usually so tedious. It's just that it was a long time ago when I recorded these. There we go, D sharp 1. And I've forgotten how I did it. Oh, that's the same as these. D sharp 1, D sharp 1. Okay, so that must have been to go with that one. Okay, so maybe all of that's the third dynamic. That would make sense. So somewhere in here, it's going to be the second dynamic. Those look louder. Have any questions? I'm using 5.7. It's 4-bit and its audio properties are like that. Okay. 5.7. Oh, okay. So yeah, is that on? What operating system is that on though? Sorry guys, I will find this eventually. Work out where I am. There we go. Okay, so that's where the second dynamic starts. So I got a lot more takes for the first dynamic. I often find that the first dynamic, they do playing softly, they sometimes struggle with, at least to keep it consistent, because and especially with things like staccato, because you're given a puff of air, and to control that is quite difficult. Oh yeah, I think I only recorded 3 dynamics for the staccato. In fact, I do keep this documented somewhere. See if there we go. There's my checklist. There's the dates where most of it was recorded. Horns, horn 2, staccato. Oh, okay, I had to do 4 dynamics apparently. Okay. Fun. So, dynamic 4 might be hiding in here. Oh yeah, they sound. There we go. Right. Okay, there's dynamic 4. Dynamic 4. The other bad thing about recording extra dynamic layers is more editing. There's some people who seem to enjoy the editing process. I mean, I don't hate it that much, but it is tedious, but some people seem to enjoy it. That should be dynamic 3. Yeah. Dynamic 3. 2. 1, 2, 3. Hey, we got there in the end. Okay, and that must be all part of the same. No, that's the flutter. So these are probably going to be quite loud. I'll just turn the volume down a bit. I think these are the flutter samples. Well, like a shake almost. Or a growl. Yeah. Okay, so and I only record these at 1 dynamic. I recorded flutters for my woodwind library as well, but I didn't record them for the oboes, or the bass clarinet, or the contrabassoon. And I think the clarinets, they don't do the full range, or they don't cover the full range, so I've decided not to include the flutter tongue. But it's there for the flutes, so I might include it for the flutes, but at the moment I haven't put it in. I decided against it because I didn't want the inconsistency. Flutter. I think it's the same. Yeah. And this is probably like key clicks or something, although a bit longer, so I'm not sure. Or these might be some extra takes we did for the first dynamic. Let's have a listen. Not quite sure what those are. Let's compare those to the first dynamic. I think that's what they are. Yeah. Okay, so there's some extra takes we did for the first dynamic. So what I will do is I will just insert. No, I can't just insert them because all my markers will be out of line then. I'll just put a little marker at the end. I'm going to move this room tone. Move the room tone to the end. That's more easy to find. I'm going to put a marker here. Sustain dynamic 1. Cannot spell that word. Extras. There we go. And then room tone goes here. Okay. Wow, that took longer than I expected. Right, now we're ready to export. So the export will probably take 5 minutes or so, maybe a bit longer. So if you've got any questions, now is a good time to ask questions. I'm going to, hang on a second. Okay, yeah, I have an EQ set up on each of these export tracks, which I sometimes enable just to roll off a bit of the bass, and yeah, I don't know if I fancy using it. I'll leave that bypass for now because I can always add EQ in the next stage. So, right, I'll export the close mic by itself. And the reason for this will become apparent in a moment. I'm just going to put these in a folder called nr_tuned. So noise removed and tuned. So I'm exporting the close mic by itself. I've got it set to mono. That's the reason I'm doing it by itself, because if I did it with the other tracks, they'd come out mono as well. Right, markers are going to be exported. I've got it set to stems, which just means selected tracks. So I've selected the close track up here. And time selection, I'm going to change that to entire project. So I'll export everything. And I'm giving it the name French horn. That should be French horn 2 actually. French horn 2 _, and then I'm using a wildcard, which is just a $ and followed by the word track. The wildcards are in here, so you can find them quite easily. So that's putting the track name in, which is going to be close, and then _nr_tuned, which is the same as the folder I put them in. Sample rates right, bit depth 24-bit. Okay, so I hit render on that, and yeah, it's going to take about 5 minutes, so we can just talk about other things. Let's have a look what questions we've got. What is the name of the library and when is the release? It's called Sofia Woodwinds because it was recorded in Sofia with Bulgarian musicians, and it's recorded in the same hall as all the Strezov stuff, so it should blend really nicely with their woodwinds and their brass and stuff, which is good because I like their stuff. When is the release? Well, I was hoping to release it by Black Friday. I had a few setbacks. There was some things that I wanted to add, but I needed to wait for Christoph to add a few things to Highs before I could do it. Those have now been added, and I sent out the update yesterday to my demo writers and beta testers. And I mean, it's pretty much good to go. I just need to update the website. Oh yeah, I've got a new website for it as well. Stuff will be posted on BI Control. So I need to add stuff on that side of things. I need to finish off the user guide, but I'm hoping to get it out by Black Friday. Hoping. I'm going down to London next week, I think. Week next, sooner than I thought. But I think Black Friday is on the 24th, so I think I'm back before then. I'm back on the 21st, so I think I'll have time to get it out by Black Friday. Hopefully, that's my plan, and maybe one or two other things. I'm also working on a few effects plugins as well, so hopefully I'll get a few things out. Do you want to see it? I can show you it. You can have a preview. Have you ever used auto sampling, like Sample Robot? I used Sample Robot once, or I tried to. I didn't get on with the interface very well. I was trying to sample, I was resampling a synth. I wanted to rip the samples from something to use in something else. I can't remember the details. But that was years ago. I think it was like Sample Robot 2 or something. It was a long time ago. But I didn't get on with the software very well. Is your mic going through the FFT? Oh, are you hearing the noise reduction? Are you getting artifacts and like chirping? Let me know if you are, because I have noise reduction on my streaming software, and it's got a noise gate on there as well. But I didn't know if that was going to cause any problems. So if that's causing me problems, let me know and I can disable that. Yep, what? There's a delay on the stream, so by the time you've replied, I've said a load of things already, so I'm not sure what you're saying yep to. Not anymore. Oh, was that the not that right? I was holding the laptop in front of me, so maybe the fan was causing problems. I see. There was feedback, but it went when you put the laptop down. Yeah, okay. Yeah, actually there's a magnet right in the front of my laptop where the lid closes, so maybe that was interfering with the mic. Sorry about that. I'll get a better system set up next time. Maybe I'll have a tablet or something, so I don't have to keep looking away and leaning down and whatnot. So yeah, I'll try to sort something else out for next time. Any questions? Anything you want to see? Because we've got another 10 minutes of rendering, or do you want to have a break? Do you want to get a drink? I'm almost out of water. An idea? Yeah. So the next stage after this is I'm going to bring these I'm going to create another Reaper session and bring the exported tracks into that session, and that's where I cut them up. So I used to keep everything in a single session, so I do the tuning, noise removal, and everything in one session. But now I find it easier to do everything in a separate session. The reason I used to do it all in one session was I was trying to save disk space, because obviously I'm exporting all of this just to re-import it, which means I've doubled the amount of disk space I'm using. But disk space is so cheap, and I'll compress this as an archive afterwards anyway, so it doesn't take up that much extra. And I just find it easier to work with two separate sessions, and each one has its own purpose. And the good thing about Reaper is that it references the files, so this is probably the same in other DAWs as well, but it basically means if I make an edit in my second session, then I come back to this one and change it and then re-export it, the second session will pick up those changes. So for example, if I find out in the next stage that the tuning that has been applied in this stage wasn't that great, then I can come back here and fix it, and it will update the second session. And I'm just thinking that one where I demonstrated tuning the sample, I hope I reset the pitch on it. I've got a bit of clipping there. That'll be that staccato note I saw earlier that was clipping. Usually if there's clipping I'll reduce the volume, but because I know where that is, I'm just going to leave it. So 30 seconds left on this, then I've got to do the other two mic positions, so they're going to take another 10 minutes. So I think once this one's done, I'll set those going and we'll have a little break, 5-10 minutes. I can get another drink then as well. And if you have any questions, please ask. We can talk about Contact, we can talk about scripting, highs, recording, editing, anything you want. Nearly done now. Right, so I'm just going to select, I'm going to check that tuning first of all. I hope I didn't. Okay, I reset that. Oh, good. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do the hall and decker now, and I can do those together. I just have to check this box, multi-channel tracks to multi-channel files, and click render. Okay, so those are going to go off by themselves now. I am just going to turn off that one and turn on these two. So you can just look at that. Let's get rid of me. So I'm going to go and get another drink, and I'll be back in about 5 minutes. And if I pop that window up, you should be able to see the little render bar going. Let's get that going before I leave. Rendering to file. That's the one. Okay, so I will leave you with the little render bar so you know how long's left. And yeah, I'll be back in about 5 minutes, and I'm gonna go grab a drink. let's try that again. Okay, right. Have the samples already been sorted, or will you do that after they've been edited? Oh, you mean like sorted through pitch? Okay, so kind of. So I record them in order from lowest to highest note. Usually, sometimes there are exceptions where it's easier for the musician to record a particular register, and like he'll do all the lower notes first, or all the higher notes first, or the middle notes first, and then do the ones on each side, something like that. So, excuse me. So it varies a bit, but in this case and in most cases, I record them low to high, so they're all in order up to that point. But then afterwards, I have the retakes. So if there's anything where I wasn't happy with the initial recording, or I just wanted to just hit that staccato again, or I just wanted to have another version just to be on the safe side, then those ones won't be in order, they'll be at the end. So as I go through, I'll notice the ones that I think are bad, and then I'll go and look in the retakes and get the correct one. Sometimes I didn't do a retake because I didn't notice it at the time that it was bad, and then I just have to make do with what I've got. So yeah, they're kind of in order, but I have to shuffle around the retakes a bit. Okay, so that's all exported. And I hope this tuning thing worked, because like I say, that's a bit of an experiment. Right, let's close this. Yeah, close that one now. What's that? So many windows open. Okay. So now what I do is I have a second project for where I cut them up. So I'm actually just going to copy one of my, actually I don't want to open another window. I'm going to copy one that I used for another project and just use it as a template, because that's a bit simpler than setting up a project again. So I'll just do that clarinet one again, and I call it rough cut. And the reason I call it rough cut is because before I was doing the final cutting in highs, but I think I'm actually going to do the final cutting in Reaper anyway, but I'll still call it rough cut, because there's always some adjustment to be made in highs in the end anyway, or whatever sampler. And it's going to tell me there's a load of files that it can't find. Are we looking at? Yeah, you can see it. Okay. Yeah, I can't find the files because it's looking for the clarinet files, so I'll just ignore it, delete everything, and we'll get rid of all these regions and stuff that's already there. So I'll just open up the region manager and deleting everything. Okay, so now we've got a blank project, and that should say French horn 2. Okay. Occasionally your microphone has what sounds like a 60 Hz buzzing, usually after you look toward the laptop. Comes and goes. Might just be me leaning over. Maybe I'm doing something with the cable. I'll hook the cable around the arm of my chair, and maybe that will help reduce that. Oh, okay, yeah, that'll be the noise gate. I'll turn the noise gate off entirely, and you'll probably just hear the buzzing constantly then. Let's have a look. Filters. Turn that down to -30. Actually, that might have done it. Let me know if that's any better. I've just tweaked the noise reduction. So those files we just exported were put in this media folder, which is inside my project folder, in this NR tune folder. And I'm just going to drag all three of them across and hit separate tracks. And you can see it's imported them, and there's all my nice markers that I put in, they're already there. So that makes things much simpler. So now it's just going to, Reaper's just building the peak files, and I'm going to build the spectrogram peaks as well. So that'll just take a moment. Buzzing's gone now. Good, good. Do you still use High's audio? I still use High's audio. Do you mean as a sampler or? I mean that's what I'm building all my libraries in now, and a few effects plugins as well. That's all I use. I only use Contact now for other people who I'm doing work for. Everything I do for myself is done in Highs. So it's taken a while to build these peaks. I'm hoping we'll actually find like a click or a key sound or something in one of these, so I can double check to make sure that that tuning didn't accidentally send the wrong channels through. Oh, okay, here's one, look. There we go. There's a nice proud click. Let's hear it. Now let's turn the volume up. That's not very loud, but I can see it. So yeah, so that this just shows this is definitely a close mic sample, because you can see that it is ahead in time of the Decker and the Hall. And if the close mic had somehow got mixed with the Decker and the Hall on export, this click would actually appear here on these tracks as well, and it doesn't. So they're all at separate times, which is how they should be. So that is nice. And this black that we're seeing here, this is evidence of the noise removal. I'd have actually preferred it if the noise removal had been a bit more heavy-handed, but because I didn't normalize the samples, it was never going to be that great. Ah, it's a bit better there. Okay, I'm not going to complain. That's decent. So let's just. Well, actually, I can start slicing these. So the first thing I do is I export these markers. So I'm just going to highlight it, and I have a button somewhere. Oh, actually, no, I deleted that button yesterday because I confused it with another button, and actually I didn't want to delete it, but never mind. I have a thing, it's something like cues to markers. Import, let's see. You can basically extract the markers from the file and I'll put them up as markers. Called export. Extract, maybe. Cues to markers. I wish I could remember what it's called. One problem of having millions of actions in Reaper is you got to remember what they're called. Okay, import item media cues as project markers. That's the one. It was there all the time. There we go. So I got my nice markers back up at the top here. And I'm going to start slicing. Oh, actually, before I slice them up, I'm going to group them all together. So again, this is just so the mics stay aligned with each other. And I don't have to use the group across tracks thing because there's only 3, so I'm just going to group them by pressing G. So that's done. And then I'm going to go to each of these markers. I've got snapping turned off. I'm just going to click roughly on the marker, and I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, and that's just going to slice them up into their sort of individual groupings. Yeah, that's good. Flutter and oh yeah, we have those extra samples. I'm going to move those now because I'll need them. Room tone, I don't really need the room tone samples, but I'll leave them in there. Let's just shuffle these about a bit. So the room tone over there, out the way. These extra samples, what am I doing? Just going to put those, stick them here. I'm going to have to adjust all those markers again. I should have put the markers in afterwards. That would have been a better idea. I'm going to do that. I'm going to delete all the markers. I'm sorry, I'm rambling to myself a bit as I'm trying to think through this. So I'm just going to delete all those markers until I've separated everything out. Then I'll put the markers back. Now that I know what the action is. Separate these out. Okay. and then I think it was Alt and Q. Yeah, there we go. That works out better. Room tone. Ooh, room tone should be the end. Oh, okay, I see. And the flutter one has popped in there because I cut it on the wrong side. Just making sure these are all aligned correctly. That one should be over there. I cut all of them on the wrong side, didn't I? Yeah. Oh, easy to fix. Okay, we done? Almost done. Almost done. Always almost done. So yeah, those peaks are rendered. Yeah, okay. So the next stage is to cut the samples. Sometimes I normalize them first and that helps the auto cut thing. I'm just going to wait for these last few peaks to be rendered on the hall mics, and then I'm going to switch back to the other peaks view and we'll slice up the samples. Questions. Where can I find your instruments online? They're at extant-audio.com. That's the back end view. There we go. Those fireworks are going again. So yeah, extant-audio.com. These are all contact based. Well, actually, there's a few synth things, but I didn't make those. I just sell them. But yeah, all mine are contact based on this website. My new website, which is called LibraWave, it's currently not live yet. I can see it because I'm an admin. Oh, I'm giving you a preview. This is going to feature, see, this is a work in progress. I shouldn't show a work in progress really, but this is going to feature my new libraries and plugins that are all going to be made in Highs. So this is going to be LibraWave.com, and this will be live soon. And all of the products on this site are actually going to be sold through Gumroad, which makes my life a bit easier. Currently, I'm selling these ones through my own, just through my own system on using WooCommerce and WordPress. I will definitely look into Reaper for these steps. I've been using Audacity primarily, but Reaper seems to have some. Yeah, I use Audacity for some stuff. Actually, mainly video editing type stuff. Like it's good for extracting multi-channel audio and things like that. I haven't tried sample editing in Audacity. I did try the noise removal and spectral editing. I was looking for an alternative to Isotope RX, but I didn't find it to be as good as Reaper. So I don't use Audacity very much, but for some video stuff I do. Is the library put out as a multi-mic library? You're talking about my new one? My new one, my Woodwind library. Yeah, that's going to be, I'll show you it. If I can remember. I don't want to screw up all the audio things I've set up. Let's risk it. We can always set it back up. Okay, so this is my new library that I'm working on, my Woodwind library. And it's like very close to well, no, it is finished. I've sent it out to the demo writers. It's finished. There's a few things I want to tweak with it, but I think this is the release version, and I'll add my tweaks in an update. And I'm still undecided about adding the Flutter tongue samples. So let's get a nice preview. I want to hide all this stuff that you guys don't need to see. There we go. Oh no, you need to see that one. That's the preview. So that's my Woodwind library, and I don't think you'll be able to hear it at the moment. Let's change that. Okay, device. Yeah, that's fine. You might be able to hear this. through pulse audio. Well, we'll see. We'll see if you can hear it. Oh, I can hear it, so that's a good sign. I'll probably need to adjust the volume. There we go. Spectral audio cleanup in Reaper. Yeah, you can. I'll show you it. So I was using, it was one of these instruments actually, had a load of clicks at the end every time they, I think it was the oboe or the English horn, and every time the musician finished the note, they kept releasing all the keys straight away before the sound had died off, and I didn't notice it during the recording, so I had to clean up all these key clicks. So I was using RX, and I did it with the automation thing, but it kept adding loads of artifacts. So then I tried doing it manually in RX, but I found it really clunky, and I actually found I could do it faster in Reaper. So I'll show you that afterwards. But yeah, the spectral editing in Reaper is really good. Is the library put out as a multi-mic? Can you do spectral audio? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so this is a multi-mic library, and I can zoom in a bit as well, I think, which will be nicer. There we go. That's a bit too much. Yeah. So yeah, multi-mic, 3 mic positions. You can click these to merge the channels. It's just your standard stuff. One thing I like about highs, well, there's millions of things I like about highs, but one thing I like that you can't do in Contact is you can actually have a web link that's clickable. So you can click that and it'll open a browser, which I quite like. You don't have that in Contact. But let's boost the volume on that just a bit. So this is the view of it in Highs. This is the Highs project. So when the user gets it, they get just a plugin or the standalone app. They wouldn't see it with all this other stuff around it. It'd just be like, that's what they'd see, this little window. But there's a list of instruments to choose from, and each of these is individually sampled. I'm not using, like, I didn't just record one oboe and create 2 sample sets. I recorded 2 oboes. So yeah, it's a full set of woodwinds, and there's nice legato. And it was recorded in 3 dynamics. It's pretty much the same as the brass we've just been looking at. There's 3 dynamic layers, and we've got the sustain samples and the staccato samples in there, and there's some release samples, and it's I didn't use the flutter samples, like I say, but I'm so tempted to put them in because they sound really nice. And I didn't record vibrato, but like a lot of people do with Contact libraries, I've added the vibrato using an LFO, and that sounds pretty nice as well. Set that up. I was going to set this up so it's being controlled by my expression pedal because I don't have another controller set up to control it. So let's see. And you can control the curve of the vibrato and stuff as well, and these nice handy tables. And there you go, you can see how the vibrato goes. So I'm just going to reset that back to where it was. And it doesn't take up a lot of RAM. It's quite light on RAM. That CPU meter is just wrong. I disagree with it. But when I load this into Reaper, the CPU usage is like 0.1%. So it's comparable with a Contact library. And you can do things like you can purge the releases to reduce the RAM usage, and you can purge these mics as I showed before. And you've got settings. You can change the streaming mode depending on what type of drive you're using. So you can do things to make it run a bit less resource heavy, but it's not very resource heavy anyway. And oh, I added a glide feature, which I like. Oh. I love that glide, especially on the clarinet. It sounds so nice. Yeah, that's my woodwind library, which has taken me far longer than I expected to complete, but now it's complete. I'm very happy, and that will be released soon. And then I'm going to use pretty much the same code to make my brass library, so that won't take so long to release. And then after that, I've got to record some strings, and that one will need different coding, so that'll take a while as well. Can't hear the instrument. Yes, you can. Can't hear sound from highs. So you can't hear sound from highs. Thank you, I'm glad you like the name. So Mr. Concept, you can hear it, can you? Nobody hearing the audio from highs? Oh, there's me. Let's get rid of me. That's not coming through. You mean I've been playing this and none of you guys can hear it? I should have looked over earlier. Okay, let's have a look. That's not the one. Because it's displaying on here, so aha, that might be the reason why. Can you hear it now? Let me know if that's fixed it. Yep, brilliant. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I had it set up to go to a different channel. So you didn't hear the vibrato or anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll do that again because I like the sound of the vibrato. And that the vibrato is one of the final features I wanted to add, which has been holding up the release because I wanted it to be just right, and I'm still not 100% happy with it. There's still some slight things that I'll improve, but that'll probably come out in an update. But I mean, it's usable and it sounds very nice. Oh, hang on a second. I have the expression still linked up to that CC. So we're on the concert flute. And we've got legato, we've got trills. You can do trills of any interval you want. The one all sound is nice. And the vibrato. So my goal with this is to make it a playable instrument. So you'll see there's no key switches. In fact, the only articulation changing that is done is sort of done through the keyboard playing. So if you want to do a staccato note, you just play staccato, you just release the key earlier. If you want it to be a bit longer, you hold it a bit longer. And there are different attacks, so if you press the key a bit harder, actually, if we go to the Concert Flute 2, I actually recorded spatato samples for this. I think that's what they're called. Or maybe it was the alto flute. But anyway, one of them I recorded other samples, and they're just triggered by velocity. Try that. There we go. I forgot to turn up the dynamics. So yeah, so I was really happy with how that came out. The legato sounded pretty rubbish before, but I managed to find a way to improve that. So I'm really happy with the legato now. And here's the glide on the clarinet that I like. Love that sound on the clarinet. Sounds good, looks playable. I hope so. I find it quite playable. I haven't actually written anything with it yet. I've been held up making it, but I've done some little experiments and I've got a few things I want to mock up. So I'll hopefully get something done before the release, but if not, I'll put a demo together afterwards. But I've got a few demo writers and who are busy working with it, and they reported some bugs with the previous version. Those have been fixed, and so far I haven't heard anything back about this version, and I'm hoping that it's bug free. So yeah, that's your sneak preview of my new woodwind library, and at some point I'll do a proper walkthrough video. Have you tried adding just a bit of oscillated volume to the regular vibrato? Well, there is a volume LFO in there actually. If I show you behind the scenes in highs, so this is the vibrato LFO, and as I raise the vibrato, you can see it going on. What are we on? I think we're on the clarinet now. So it's basically I had to tweak the parameters for every instrument to make it sound as real as possible. So what I do, I go and get a recording of, or I look on YouTube sometimes, or sometimes I sample it, but I get a recording of of the instrument actually playing vibrato, and then I just play with mine and get it to sound as close as possible. And so yeah, so I tweaked the amount of pitch modulation and gain modulation and how it responds to the controller and stuff like that. And if you push the controller right up, if you're not playing, it can sound a bit artificial, so it's all to do with the whole performance. Whereas if I play a lower note and I push the vibrato controller right up, I think it sounds a bit fake. So I don't think that sounds very real, but if you pull it down a bit and in the course of a phrase, it sounds great. And if you're playing higher up, then you can push it further as well, because the pitch of the note seems to vary how the vibrato sounds. Good, 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 good. On my on the YouTube channel you're watching this on, I have some tutorials for highs. I haven't done any scripting ones yet, but I've got things about how to set up dynamic crossfades, which is really easy in highs. I mean, it's not that complicated in Contact, but highs has a built-in thing for doing dynamic crossfades, so it makes it just that little bit easier. And what else I've done? I've covered a few subjects using the designer. So it's much easier to make an interface in highs than Contact. Also, this entire interface is done with vector graphics, which is why I can scale it to any size and you don't get any blurriness. There's no pixelation. And actually the user gets this, when the user gets hold of it in the settings, you can zoom in and out all you want. Well, between 100% and 200%. So that's really handy. That's something that you don't get with Contact. You can only use raster graphics in Contact, which of course you can use in highs as well. But we get that added benefit of being able to do everything with vectors, including things like this logo here. That's a vector. I did have some icons as well. They were in an older version. These knobs I designed within highs, and they're vector graphics. And I'll do tutorials on them at some point, or maybe do it in another live stream, because it's quite fun designing graphics within highs. It's got like they're called paint routines, but it's basically you can just any vector you can just draw it from like within the script editor. You just like you want a circle, you type a circle and you get a circle. Things like that. Yeah, well, highs has SFZ import just for the mapping, just so you can map samples. I've never used it actually, but it's this button here, and I guess you just select an SFZ file and it'll map the samples in from that. So I guess that saves you a bit of work, but I've never used it. Highs is also great for dealing with multi-mic stuff. It's like I think I discussed this on the forum recently, or maybe it was a private conversation. I can't remember, but yeah, Heis has a built-in concept of multi-mic samples, whereas Contact doesn't. It just has groups. So it's a bit easier to work. Well, it's a lot easier to work with multi-mic samples in Heis than it is in Contact. Would love to see GUI design tutorial in Heis. Yeah, I did a tutorial, not a GUI design as such, but just using the designer, sort of like the basic functionality. But yeah, I'll try and get around to doing a more thorough one. Maybe we'll go through a project together or something. I mean, I'm not the greatest designer in the world, as you can tell, but I like a functional interface, so that's what I went for with this. For some of my Contact libraries, I hire a designer to, or I had a few different ones to design more interesting interfaces, because I'm not that great at coming up with the ideas. But this was a very simple thing. I mean, it's squares and blue and a knob. So it didn't take too much. And it was the colouring of the keyboard, that was Christoph's idea. I was going to do them blue. But yeah, that's more elegant. That's what I said to him. When he came up with that, I said, yeah, that's more elegant. And the keyboard itself is vectors, which was great because I needed to show the whole range from the piccolo all the way down to the contrabassoon. And with the previous keyboard that we had in Heis, it was, I think it was rasters anyway, it looked horrible. But he changed it to vectors, and now that's lovely and smooth. So I'm really pleased with how it's come out altogether, and I'm hoping people will like it, and I'll hear it in something famous maybe. So let's get back to our Reaper project. I think, where are we up to? We're cutting the samples. That's the one. So, oh yeah, so we're at this stage. So what I'm gonna do, let's just zoom that out. I'm thinking of normalizing the samples. Let's see how it goes without normalizing at this stage. We'll definitely be normalized at the end. Okay, so I'm gonna press D on my keyboard, which opens the dynamic split items window. And I have it set up like this. I play around with all these settings to get it where I want it, and this actually looks like it's fine. I'm only cutting the start of the samples. I used to have this checkbox enabled when gate closes to automatically chop off the end of the samples and remove silence, but I don't use that anymore because, well, I don't use it with these samples because I want to get in there and manually adjust the release tail. And the important one I have is this split selected and grouped items. So I only select the close mic because that has the earliest start time, and then it will automatically slice the other ones as well because they're all grouped together. I'm just going to have a quick look, make sure I'm not slicing any in the middle. Yeah, that looks all great. So yeah, we do these extras as well while we're at it. Yeah, that looks great. So hit split. Now all of these are split, and sometimes I'll go through and I'll then do the next dynamic and the next dynamic and split them all and then work on them. I think this time I'm just going to work on them, so we'll split those ones afterwards. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight them all, and I'm just going to pull in the ends a bit and pull out the beginning a bit, so I have more to work with. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'll pull that out a bit more. There we go. I want to make sure I get right at the start. I'm going to trim these anyway, so it doesn't matter if I've got a bit too much. Sorry. Right, that one. Nothing in there, we'll get rid of that one. Oh, and I'm going to turn ripple editing off. I don't want that on all the time. So I'm going to highlight these, and then oh, you probably won't be able to hear the audio from Reaper anymore. Let's just test that first of all. So I'm just going to play that. Can we hear that? I don't think we've got audio out from Reaper anymore, so I need to adjust something. Let's put that in a loop. So let's get it so you can hear the audio again. I remember what I did. Oh yeah, I remember it was. It was in Jack. I think that's right. So I think we should have audio now. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, let's turn that off because it's annoying. Okay, so we've got audio again. No audio on this end. No, don't refresh. Well, can you hear me? If you can hear me, don't refresh. Working? Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. It's Reaper. It's Linux Mint to do the routing in here, and yeah, I forgot to set that up again. So I knew something would go wrong. First time you do anything, things go wrong. So first live stream, things are going to go wrong. And there's the fireworks again, which is setting off the dog. Let's get rid of that. I don't know what that one is. Okay, so I'm gonna select all of these, and I have an action down here. Reposition items. Now I don't know if that's just a standard Reaper one. Let's have a look. No, this is in the SWS extensions. So I have it down here on a custom toolbar. And I'm doing fine, thank you. It is working, nothing. Did I miss any questions? Okay, so I hit that and I select item end, and I put in 1 second. You can put in whatever you like there, hit OK, and now all the samples are spaced exactly 1 second apart, all the ones I selected, which is just this block. So they're all 1 second apart. That just makes it a bit easier to work with them. And now we're going to go into the spectral edit view. And I vary how I do this. Like what I used to do when I was using the auto slicing thing in highs is I'd usually just sort of leave the sample like this, make sure the start and ends were roughly where I wanted them. So I'd probably move that one a bit closer, for example, and check the release. And I'd export it and then just let the automated thing in highs do it. But and I'd listen to the sample all the way through. But now I'm doing it sort of manually. I'm not sure quite what the best approach is. Do I listen to the sample or do I cut it first? If I cut the sample and then listen to it and don't like it and want to change it, then I've kind of wasted the time cutting it. Let's cut them first. Maybe I'll do both. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so I have custom actions set up. So I need to show you my custom actions because, well, I'll show you. Let's cut the first item. So now we can cut it back here. This might be really quiet for you guys because these are quiet samples. So I'm just going to boost the volume a bit. The sample doesn't really start until about here. I'll probably start it there. I don't like that puff of air at the beginning. I'll start it there. So what you can do is just drag it in. But I have a really quick solution. I just press Alt and S and it just trims the start. So, and I also have a similar one for the end of the sample. So I'll find the end and I'll just press Shift and S and that'll trim the end of the sample. And I've got custom actions set up for that. So I'll try and find them. So I call it split and delete before, and then I've got split and delete after. And I set these up a long time ago, but those are the actions I'm using. So this is a custom action, and it says here split items at edit cursor, select left, and then remove selected. And then I do the same thing with the other one, except it selects the right, and then it removes it. So it's the same sort of thing. So really handy. I also have one to jump between the starts of each sample, which I don't use anymore really very much, but that was another custom action that was helpful to me at one point. You see, my sample editing techniques change. Usually with every few projects I'll find some new way of doing something. But this action I've got, oh actually this isn't a custom action. this one to jump between them. It's just called select and move to next item, and then the select and move to previous item, and yeah, that just jumps between them. And I've just assigned that to some keyboard shortcuts. Yeah, okay, we're all good there. Yeah, I think I'm going to cut and then I'll listen to them afterwards because I find it quicker just do one thing at a time. So I'm just going to cut this. And you'll notice when it cuts, it adds in a crossfade, but I'll remove that at the end. See, there's some noise going on here. Maybe this is where the spectral editing will come in. We have a look at that now. I'll trim the end and then we'll have a look. It's always the Decker or the Hall mic that's going to have the longest tail. Or almost always. Very unusual for the close mic to have the longest tail. Okay, there. So let's see if we can isolate that a bit. So it's very slight on the close mic, quite echoey on the Decker. Can't hear it. Oh yeah, I can slightly hear it on the Hall. These aren't the best headphones. Actually, I have the best headphones. I should be wearing those, but I won't. I'll wear these ones. Right, so we need to remove this. Let's put an EQ on there just so we can hear it a bit more clearly. And I don't usually use an EQ for this spectral editing. I just want to sort of bring out this sound so we can hear it. And I put that on the wrong track, so change that. I'll put it on the master out. Oh, you might see I've got retune up here. That's just for monitoring. It doesn't actually do any pitch correction. Yeah. There it is. Yeah, editing samples involves a lot of being annoyed by repeating noises. I really don't like editing samples. But I don't like hiring it out either. I've hired it out a few times and the results are always good, but I always end up redoing it because I like to know exactly what processing has been done to my samples. I don't like processing the samples. I like a little bit of noise removal, a little bit of tuning if it needs tuning, and well, they always need a slight bit of tuning, and a little bit of EQ or normalization, and that's it. I don't like to process the samples. I think you should treat it like you've got your raw recording and then you're going to mix it. So I write my music with the raw samples, then I'd like to do all the mixing and stuff. And yeah, if I hire it out, I don't know what's been done. I don't know what other people have been doing. So I like to edit. I like to have edited my own samples, but I don't like the process of editing samples. Okay, so we can hear that click. And I'm going to get rid of that now. Check everything's okay. Yeah, okay. Right, so now we're going to do some spectral editing. I'll do it on the Decker because we'll hear that more clearly. So you highlight and then there's a command to insert a spectral edit. And this is going to seem really slow, but actually I can get quite fast at this when I'm doing a lot because I had to do about 1,000 samples or something like this. Now I don't actually know where the command is to add a spectral edit. Again, I've got it on my toolbar, but I guess you just go add spectral edit. No, that's my custom command. Let's just type spectral edit. There we go. So it's that one, add spectral edit to item. And yeah, I've got this on a custom toolbar button somewhere, that one there. And just click on the item, highlight the area I want, and then click add spectral edit. And then it gives me the spectral edit. And the top and the bottom are identical, it's just because it's a stereo sample, so we have two. And then let's make this window bigger. So, ooh, not that big. Yeah, about that. Okay, and we can enhance that if we want to, or whatever. Change the colors of it and things like that. Right, we've got a few controls for this. I won't go through all of them, but we've got gain reduction, which is just gain reduction on that point in the sample, which I don't. It's what I used to use, and it when I first started spectral editing, I didn't know any better, and I just turned the volume up and down. But that cuts out everything. It's not great. But if you use these two knobs here, these are for the compressor, so that sets the ratio. I'll just turn up to there or something. I don't care too much. And then this one pulls the threshold down, and this will just pull out the peaks, just the loud stuff. See, just fades it out. So just make it match the background basically, and then we can use this one down here to add a crossfade. Sorry, a fade in. And this is such a nice way to edit, and we can add a little fade in at the side there. Pull that out. Pull that out. We don't really need all this fading in, but it's just nice that we can do it. Pull that down from the top, because okay, so now hopefully that will have taken away that little noise without destroying the audio, and we've got the volume boosted quite a bit here. So I noticed a slight dip, so I'm just going to turn that up slightly and I just tweak it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. One thing is, when these samples are normalized, like if I normalize this one, I'm going to normalize it to -3 dB. Wow, that's going to be loud. So I'll just pull this volume fader right down so I don't deafen you. We might hear it again. That's too quiet, isn't it now? Yeah, it's obviously more noticeable now we boosted the volume, but that's one reason why I don't always normalize straight away, because then you'll start overcompensating, because once we get this into the sampler and we add the volume curve, even though it's normalized, it's going to bring the volume back down anyway. So I'm cautious with it. I'm going to boost that crossfade a little. Actually, I think I'll just raise this up a little bit. I just like to tweak it. I just like to do the minimal amount necessary. Okay, that's better. And I made a custom action. In fact, I might have even written a script for this. I don't know if I scripted this or if somebody else scripted it, but it's annoying now that I've got it on this one. I'd like to be able to just right click and copy it. Please don't tell me they've added a copy feature. No, they haven't added a copy feature. Okay, but yeah, they haven't added a copy feature yet. So you can't copy and paste it to the other items, but I made a little script. I won't say I made it, just in case I didn't, but I think I did. But it copies it and then it pastes it. And then I can just adjust as necessary. Oh, we've got it on that one as well. And this one makes it so much faster because I can just copy and paste and then just do a slight adjustment. Pull that down there. And I think I actually made one that would copy it between a lot more items. I can't remember. Yes, that's alright. I don't really like the sound of this attack though. I mean, that's nice on its own, but in the context of playing on the keyboard, it might not be so nice. One thing I found with sampling is often you don't find the problems until you've exported your samples and you put them in the sampler, and then you play on the keyboard and you realise you've got to go back and edit some more because it's not quite right. But yeah, that sounds good to me. We've got rid of that little blemish and we can move on. This one's got one as well. I'll clear that one up afterwards. Let's see, any questions? No questions. Okay. So I'm just going to go through and cut these samples, and I'll come through and listen to them afterwards. Yeah, the spectral editor makes it so, the spectrogram view makes it so much easier to edit these samples. Back a bit. This spectral editing is based on a plugin created by Schwa, is it pronounced Schwa? One of the developers of Reaper. He has a company, makes plugins, I think it's called Stillwell Audio, and they have a spectral editor plugin, and basically this is that plugin built into Reaper. And this makes it so much easier to edit samples. Though nasty noise there. Ah, not so nasty, but still it's there. But as you can see, it's quite tedious editing samples. I'll often put music on when I'm just cutting like this. I'm going to go through afterwards and listen anyway, so if I have made some mistake with my cutting, which usually I don't make too many mistakes, but if I've made some terrible mistake, I'll hear it afterwards. So yeah, usually it's alright for me to put some music on and just listen to something while I do this. But it's not so bad when you're just editing one instrument. But when you're editing every instrument in the woodwind section, and then all the brass instruments, it's tedious. But what I'll do, I'll edit this, and then how many do we have to go? Oh, goody, millions. Yeah, I'll edit this, and then I'm going to discuss some of the scripts I've got set up, because there's some they're quite handy. Some of them I've paid for, and they're not all free. Some of them I've commissioned, so they were created for me, and they're available for sale to the general public as well. And oh, this looks nasty. That's where he's released the valves before he's let the note ring out. I always miss that during the sampling session, and it's so annoying because I'm going to go in now and remove those. One good thing is this stuff, when it's at the end like this, it's only heard in the release triggers, and you can cheat and take a release sample from the next note and just stretch the pitch. But I prefer everything to be chromatic if possible. I don't like sample borrowing for the standard mapping. But I'm going to do that anyway. I use sample borrowing for the round robin. So. But yeah, some of these scripts I paid for, but I think, in fact, yeah, all of them are available for the general public, and some of them were commissioned by, I think it was by Sound Iron. One of the big sampling companies, might be in Sound Iron. But yeah, the same guy, they commissioned him because he's the Reaper script guy. He's the guy you go to, and he's very good at creating scripts that are useful for sampling. And oh, that's a mess. And he's created things like tuning scripts, auto renaming scripts, and some of them are free. Some of them you can get in the extensions in the repack thing. And if you go in here and just type X-Rayman, I think that's how it is. Oops, what did I do there? X, that's his name. There it is. Yeah, all the scripts by this guy basically. He does a load of scripts that are useful for sample editing. I don't think he actually does sample editing himself. He's just been commissioned for it. But yeah, Reaper is definitely the best tool I've found for editing samples. Not that I've used that many, but I have looked into a lot of them. At one point I wanted to use Keymap Pro when that was before Apple bought it and closed it down. But that was Mac only, and I've never had a Mac, so that wasn't an option. Although I did install it on a virtual machine briefly and tried it out. But I find Reaper to be so fast and easy to use that I don't really spend that much time now looking for alternatives. That's a weird little sample. It's a mistake. When I come across things like that, I think, do I have any use for them? And other than maybe some sample library to release on April Fools, I can't think of anything. So, but I keep them around anyway. So I've just cut that and I stuck it at the end of the block, and that goes into my rejects pile. Ooh, work to be done on that one. Let's see. There's probably one I won't use because it's got like that double start on it, but we'll see. We can always chop it and glue it and do all sorts. The editing is where the magic happens with creating sample libraries. Well, I suppose the real magic happens when you record the samples, but then the second stage of magic happens. And it's all in the editing. The scripting, that's important as well, but if you don't spend time editing the samples, then the scripting is pretty meaningless. There's another one. You gotta have your samples sounding good. Okay. Almost there. Only another 1,000 to go. But I think I'll just edit this block for tonight. I usually do about one, when I get into it and I'm working on a project, I usually do about one session a day, or one instrument a day. Because that's about all I can stand. And I'll do the whole thing. I'll cut it, tune it, noise remove it, loop it, and then test it, and then map the samples and test them. And I'll do it all in one go. But I usually only do about one a day. I mean, the looping on its own, that just gives me a headache. Because you've got to listen to these sounds that they sound lovely when they're in a piece of music in some sort of context, but on their own, they really start to strain the ears after a while. Yeah, I leave these long tails on the samples. I like to capture that bit of hall noise at the end. And if you go on the peaks view, you can see it looks like silence. I'm going to boost it up. See, this bit, it looks like silence. So a lot of people would be tempted to cut that off. But when you go in the spectrogram, you can see there's something there. So I like to keep that little something, because once it's gone, I was going to say you can't get it back. You can get it back in the session, but once it's gone from the sample, you can't get it back. So I like to keep as much of it as I can. And it doesn't really have that much extra disk space or RAM usage, especially since those bits are going to be in the release samples. It's not adding much on. Somebody was asking me about release samples on the forum on VI Control. I always call it the forum, as if that's the only forum. On the way to the forum, I was asked about release samples, because spectral editing in Reaper is a killer feature. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was asked about release samples because in one of my tutorials, like the series I did on contact scripting, somebody pointed out that I was just readjusting that one. Somebody pointed out that I was suggesting to use release samples with the drum library. And it's rare that you're going to want to use release samples with a drum library because they tend to just be one-shots. But I mean, it was a long time ago I recorded those tutorials, but from what I can remember, I was basically showing that for demonstration purposes, to show how you can implement release samples. And if I remember correctly, I was also doing a cymbal choke thing. I think that was in the same series of videos. And for a cymbal choke, that's where you will want to use the release sample, or you can do. You don't have to. There's other ways to do it. But that's one method. So yeah, if you get those videos and you see that I'm suggesting to use release samples with a percussion library, I'm just doing it to demonstrate in that video, which is showing other stuff you can do with the percussion library. I started with the percussion library because I think that was the first series of tutorial videos I did, and it's for beginners. And percussion is simpler than pitched instruments. I mean, for one thing, you don't really have to do any tuning unless you're doing pitch percussion. But with just like your standard drum kit, there's not much tuning you've got to do once you record it, and not much noise removal either, because except for the softer samples, the percussion tends to push the noise floor right down. So I think we're getting near the end now. I hope we are. Now this one's interesting because I'm seeing lots of extra audio there, but I think that's probably just going to be air or hall noise. Actually, it sounds like somebody might have bumped a mic stand. Anyway, something bassy, so I'm just going to chop that off. You can you get used to looking at the spectrograph, and you can see where the sample ends, where there's noise, where there's air sound. I mean, air tends to be higher up, like this, and the majority of your sound is concentrated in a particular area, and you know that's the note. You'll see noises, you'll see where the note wavers and things like that. I find the spectral view so much better than editing in the peaks view, which is what I did for many years. Oh, we're nearly there. There's another key click. The key clicks are nice, but I like to have them under control. I don't like them just to be in every release. They get really annoying if every time you release the key you get a big loud click like that. But if you can have it so you can turn them on and off, or turn them, adjust the volume, then that's quite useful. So usually I record key clicks as well. I don't think I did for this, but I did for most of the woodwinds. Although again, it's like the flutter tongue, I didn't implement them in the library in the end. What's that very top bar? Or right above the title bar? Right below the title bar. This one up here is it like gives you an overall view. I think it's called the navigator. You can move it around, but if I zoom right out, I can then slide around in it. I don't know if you can see it. It depends on your monitor resolution. Actually, I can make this bar bigger, so then you can see it more clearly. So if I zoom in, let's see, I'll zoom in over here. You can see it gives me this square, and this is showing me what I'm seeing. And it's just another way to move around a larger project. I don't use it that often, but I have it up there at the top anyway, just for when I need it. We're almost at the end. 13 people watching me slice samples. Well, I'm very grateful that you're hanging around. So, after we've sliced these, I'm gonna, well, usually I'd have a listen to them, but I think what I'll do is I'll just make sure we've got the full range, and then I'll export them and I'll import them into highs just so you can listen to it. These samples won't sound great because we're not going to be finishing them off before we import them, and also the lowest dynamic never sounds that great because there's always more air on it. Okay, so that's good. Oh, one other thing I do, I go back to the peaks view. So once I get all my rejects, and there'll be a load of rejects in here that I don't want, I'll put them all over at the end of the session, of the end of the block. So I've got my sustained dynamic 1 block, and all the rejects, the takes that I don't use, go at the end of that block, and then I've got a shortcut key again for this, but I use a custom color, and I just turn them into, well, I set them to black. But I have other colors set up as well for different purposes. And that's just a shortcut key, but you can do it by right clicking and going to somewhere in here. Item properties maybe. Well, I thought there was an option in here for colors. Oh, maybe it's in take. Nope. Oh, that's right in front of me. Item and take colors. Yeah, there it is. So you can set a custom color in here, and you can also set that up for keyboard shortcuts and whatnot, like I have. It's very handy. It just means at a glance I can see which samples are the ones I want and which ones I don't want. Right, so the next thing to do is to organize these. Well, actually, the next thing to do is to listen to them, take out the duds, put in the ones that I like, but I'm just going to quickly go through and make sure I've got every single pitch. Then we'll rename them and export them, just so I can show you that process. And I don't know how Mike Verter does it with his 8-hour marathons drinking whiskey and never going to the toilet, but I'm going to go to the toilet. So talk amongst yourselves for 5 minutes. And I'll be back in 5 minutes. Well, I'll probably be back in less than 5 minutes. Okay, I've re-enabled the audio. You'll be able to hear me now. Like a two-tone scrubbing view. Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Right, okay, so we're just going to go through, and I'm not sure what the full range of the instrument is. So we'll just sort of listen till it, because what will happen is it'll go through all the notes. Like, I'm going to play through them all really quickly, and then so I'll go from low to high, and then when we hit a low note again, like it sounds like it's gone back down, that means we've gone to the retake, so that means we've got to the end of the instrument's range. So let me just start this off. Now usually my shortcut keys are useful here. Jumping, am I pressing the wrong one? Oh, I see. There we go. Oh, okay, so they're not in order because there was a jump there. Unless I didn't start at the beginning. Ah, that might be why we redid the first dynamic. Because those are not in order at all, so I'm guessing we had some trouble with the first dynamic. Let's listen to these. Yeah. Okay, so we got audio. Yeah, we've got audio. Okay, so those which were originally my extras, they're actually going to be my my sort of starting ones now, because these have problems. I'll need to sort that out. So I'm just going to reposition these again 1 second apart. And these ones, so we'll assume these are the good take, the ones that we're going to work with. So yeah, I seem to remember now that we finished the session and decided to have another go at the first dynamic. We've done that on a few projects where we get to the end and then decide we're going to redo something if we have enough time. This may also be one of those occasions where he didn't record them all chromatically and he swapped around in the registers because it was easier for him to hit certain notes. So let's see what we've got. So we start off on D#1 and we finish on F3. So D#1. What's the MIDI note number for D#1? Usually I'd sit here and count down on my keyboard from C3 down. But I don't know if I can be bothered doing that, and I think I have a little chart somewhere. Where did I put it? There it is. MIDI note numbers. Okay. D#1 is 39. So we're going to number these from 39 upwards. Now I'm going to come into this session another day and tidy it up and make sure that I do have the full range and I'm using the right samples and whatnot, but I don't want to bore you with all that, so we're just going to rename the samples now. Now what I use is, it's in the extensions. Again, this is the SWS extensions, which are free. You can go and install the SWS extensions. You go to the label processor and this box pops up, and it's basically, it's just an auto namer, so you can use these little wildcard things to specify certain elements that you want to include in the name. So I'll just demonstrate. So I'm going to start off by typing sustain, because this is the sustain samples, and then where it's got /t here, if we look at the key up here, I wonder if I make this bigger. No, I can't. So /t is the track name, so I'm putting in /t, that gives me the track name. And then another underscore, and the underscores are just spaces. And then I've got slash and a little e, and slash and a little e is enumerate in selection on track. And basically what that means is, in the selection of items you got, it's going to put, it's going to number them from, so it'll go like the first one, it'll do 0, 1, 2, 3 or whatever. And then in these square brackets you can tell it how you want them to be numbered. So the 1, that means it's going to have 1 digit, so it's not going to do like 0, 0, 1, it's just going to do 1. And then the next number after the little comma, that's the starting number. So I'm going to start it on 37. I've closed it now. I think it was 37. It doesn't matter. 37. Then I'm going to do an underscore. I'm going to write dynamic 1 and round robin 1. There is only one round robin, but I'll leave it in there anyway. And it's going to do this. It's going to do each track, and it's just going to put in, it's going to take the track names, which I've set over here, close deck or hall, and it's going to put that in the item name. So I'm going to hit OK, and that's done. All of them are renamed. So close deck or hall, note numbers, etc. Now I used to use, and you will have seen this if you saw my contact tutorials, 39. Okay, 39. It's alright, we can redo it. 39. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, so the first one's 39 and it'll just automatically number them up to 65. So oh, and I should make sure we haven't missed any out, so So that was F3. If C is 60, that'd be 61, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, that's right. Okay. Yeah, if you saw my tutorials, I used to use the batch file item converter, and I used to select all the items and add them in here and then do the naming in here and all that stuff. And that was great for getting it to render it out with an effects chain. But then they updated Reaper and you don't need to bother with that anymore, because you can just use the regular render window and select selected media items as the source, and it does pretty much the same thing, and it just uses your regular effects. So I don't use the batch item converter thing anymore. So we'll just export these to the desktop in a folder called sustain. 48,000, yep, stereo. I'm selecting stereo, but the close mics, we want them to export as mono. So I select this checkbox here that says tracks with only mono media to mono files, and I always select this one anyway, multi-channel tracks to multi-channel files. Wave output and regions. I did a video a couple of weeks ago about looping, so I always have the regions on, because when I loop the samples I'll want the loop points embedded, and you use regions to do that, so that's why that's on. And then hit render. Oh no, don't hit render, I forgot, I've got to put the file name in. So we need French horn 2, and then we do underscore, and then I've got the item wildcard, which means it'll put the item name in, and it gives you a little preview here of what the item, what one of the items will be called. So we can check that that's right. And okay, now I'll render it. Why is there no audio? That seems strange. Selecting media items. That seemed like it didn't render any audio. I'm just gonna. Oh, I did. Oh, okay, there's just no preview. So that's fine. Just did it so quickly it looked like there was no audio being rendered. I'm still suspicious, but we'll live with it for now. So if we go to the desktop folder, let's just minimize that one. Close that window. Okay, so these are these are the files we just exported. So you see, it's really quick to just export them all and get them all named. And that's really fast. If you have multiple round robins, which I will have for the staccato, then I use a slightly different process. See if there's any questions. Nope. Okay. So yeah, if I'm doing multiple round robins, I have another custom function down here, which I can't remember what it's made from. I'll see what the action's called. Select items, maybe. Actually, I've got it custom. The use. Well, I call it select and label. So if I just open up my custom toolbar, hopefully I can find it in here. Select and label. No, you can't edit it from here. That's annoying. Insert action, change action. What it's called? Oh, okay. Skip select label processor. So it's made out of these two actions: skip select items from selected items, and then open the label processor. And both of those are just in the extensions, the Sweetwater extensions. These ones, SWS. So I use that. So let's imagine these are not grammatically sampled here. These are, let's imagine these are actually round robin samples. So I've got 3 samples here. I've got and there are 3 round robins, and then the next sample starts here, another 3, and another 3, and that's how it would be for the staccatos, for example. So what I do is I hit my select and label, and then it asks me how many I want to skip. I want to put let me make sure I get this right. I put 3 in there, I think, and 0 on the offset, and then yeah, so now it selects every 3rd item, and then I can name those with round robin 1, just as I did before with the label processor, and hit OK. Then I click cancel. Then I select again, and I bring up the same action, but instead of 0, I put 1, and that selects the next one across, so I can change that to RR2. And then I do the same again and change that to 2. And then I change that to RR3. So that's how I would name round robin samples. X-Rayman, who did a lot of the other scripts, which we'll have a look at in a minute, he has made a better renaming thing for doing round robins, I believe. I haven't actually got it though, because I'm happy with this method. But I think his system is more automated and has a lot more functions, and that was made for Sound Iron or somebody. I don't think it's Sound Iron. I think it's the other one, Impact Soundworks. I think it might be. Oh, yeah, it's one of those sample companies. But yeah, he's made a multi-renamer script that's a lot more powerful. But I like this simple method for my purposes. It's fine. Hello, George Porras. 16 viewers. I thought the viewer count was going to drop off the longer I've been talking, but that's good. Okay, so we'll have a look at some of these custom scripts. Now, I don't know if you can see that toolbar down there, okay? I can't scale it up. If you can't see it, let me know, and I can magnify it with the streaming software. It'll only take a moment. But I'm just going to go through some of these basically. So I've got spectral peaks. So along with we can access that from up here, or that tuning thing. So in this peaks display thing, we've got spectral peaks. So spectrogram is this view we've been looking at. Spectral peaks, which is a shortcut key I've got there, is you see the peaks with the spectrogram overlaid. And this is kind of useful if you're picking out the pitch of samples. So I can see that this sample here is, let's have a look. So that's B1. So I would assume, since this is the same color, that this is also a B. It's not. But you get the idea. You can sort of use these to pick out which pitches you're dealing with. So that would be B, because that's blue and that one's blue. That one's green. That's an odd one out. C sharp 2, so that would be C sharp. Yeah, okay. So spectral peaks is slightly useful. I don't use it very much. Remove click. This is one I got from Kenny Joyer, I believe. I think it was something I saw in one of his videos. But if you've got a click like this, click on it and then click remove click. Well, it doesn't work on the ones with a sustain. Let's just hear it on the close mics. Yeah. Remove click. So the idea is basically it just chops it and crossfades it. I don't actually use it very much at all. I rather do the spectral editing. But a lot of the stuff on this toolbar has become kind of redundant. And it's just sort of stuff that I haven't bothered to remove yet. So some of it I still use, and some of it I remove accidentally, like that cues to marker thing. I removed that yesterday. I'm gonna have to re-add it. So reset item volume. That's that one I was talking about earlier. So I'm just gonna. I've got this menu back now. That's great. Okay, so let's say I normalize this, and then I want to reset the volume. I click the reset volume thing, but now I can just go in here and reset it how I used to, now that that's magically reappeared. But yeah, reset item volume does the same thing. And that's just a standard action. I haven't done anything custom with that. Reset item length. I don't know what I use that for, but I think maybe it's to start over if I make a mistake. If I click reset item length, it's going to pull out the item back to its full original length before I chopped it. So I guess I have some use for that. Again, that's just a standard action. Cues to regions. We don't have any cues, but if I was to have loop points in these samples, and I click cues to regions, it would turn those loop points into Reaper regions. And I forgot I add a region. I think you just, I don't do it manually. I think you just select one like that and do add region maybe. Or is it insert region? Insert region, there we go. Yeah, so that's what a region would look like, and basically I'd have one for every loop in my in the project. One for each sample, each sustained sample. To edit it, can give you more clicks. The stream ends when everybody leaves or I get hungry. I don't know, I haven't decided when the stream ends. I was planning to go until 9 o'clock, but I've gone past 9, so I guess I'll just ramble on for a bit more, and we'll probably wrap it up in about, I don't know, 20 minutes or something. To edit it can give you more clicks, I mean by cutting it. Do you mean like if I just cut it sort of randomly, it'll give me more clicks? Is that what you like? But I think I know what you mean. You mean if I do something like that and then just overlay it? Well, actually, I added a crossfade, but like that. Is that what you mean? But yeah, Reaper automatically adds crossfades when you overlay items, and that kind of gets rid of the clicks. Oops. Found a new button. That's interesting. So that's the cues to regions. Then I've got select and label. That's that one we looked at already. Just that double action one. Group across tracks. Again, that's the one we looked at earlier, which will group items across tracks according to how they're lined up. What's this one? Select items by length. Now this one I don't use anymore, but this was a handy one. If I was slicing the samples and doing the remove silence as well, you'd end up with some really short samples which basically had nothing in them and they were just blips. So what I'd do is I'd highlight them and click this select items by length, and you can put in a threshold of how many seconds, and it would select all the items that were, I think, less than that threshold. So that was quite a handy one. But yeah, I don't use that anymore. Normalize items to dB, that just brings up the standard normalize to dB Reaper action, which is what I used before export. I'll normalize everything usually to -3 or -6, depending on the samples. It varies a bit. Actually, we didn't normalize before export. I knew I missed something. So let's do that now. And just re-render those very quickly. I'm still dubious about that. Okay. You don't hear any samples. Let me just check. Tell me if you hear this one. The audio's not coming through, is it? Yeah, this happened earlier. I've just got to reconnect it up in Jack for some reason. I don't know why that happens. Sorry about that. I'm going to leave that open. Okay, you should be able to hear it now. Yeah, sometimes Jack disconnects for some reason. I'm not quite sure why. But should be back now. Yep, brilliant. Okay. So you can also normalize from a low dB to a high level, from a low dB level to a high dB level. Yep, everybody can hear it. Good. So yeah, so the normalizing one, that's handy. Reposition items, that's the one where I reposition the items. And I always select at item end. I found that useful. If you want all the items to be touching, I set that to 0, and then they'll all be touching. But generally, I just do 1 second apart. If you saw my looping video, you'll see I use that to line up the looped samples with all the other mic positions, so that's quite a handy one. Copy volume. Right, okay, sometimes I'll go back to the peak views for this. Sometimes I'll find a sample and I'll want to tweak the volume, right? Let's say this one here. See how it's really quite loud at the beginning and then tails off? That means when it's not gonna well, I find I have more difficulty crossfading those. So I enable the volume envelope. So that's just the standard Reaper item volume envelope. I have a shortcut key for that. And then I can lower that bit of the sample without affecting the rest of it. And then I have this copy volume, which copies it to the other items that are grouped with the selected item. So it won't affect the other ones. It's just the ones that are grouped. So that's a handy one. I have one for pitch as well. Now this one is pitch to rate. I think this is a action I got from the Rescripts extension, from the Repack extension. And basically, let's say I change the pitch of this item. So I've just bumped it up with a shortcut key, of course. I've bumped it up to pitch plus 50. And that's going to use the project's pitch changing algorithm, which is set in the project settings to elastic efficient, which is the one I always use. But sometimes that can add artifacts, so sometimes it's actually better to change it by stretching the sample and change it based on the play rate. So this sample pitch to rate will this script pitch to rate will convert that 0.5 to a playback rate of, in this case, 1.029, and it'll also have the same effect of changing the pitch. So I usually use that with things like staccato samples where I've had to change the pitch of the whole sample for some reason, and I just would rather it change the rate slightly. I don't use that one very often, but I do use it occasionally, especially if I'm getting artifacts with the regular pitch adjustment. Right. Sorry, I was looking to see if there's any more questions. And what are we up to? Okay, picture it, select by colour. Alright, yeah, that's a handy one. So if I'm colouring things, so I might go through, when I'm auditioning them, I might go through and change one to pink, change another one to pink, change one to other colours like blue. For whatever reason, I might decide. So sometimes I'm going through and I just assign colours rather than swap them out, and then at the end I can go and swap them all out. So if I assign blue, let's say, to all the ones that I decide I want to replace, then I can just highlight them all, go select by colour. No, hang on, that's not how I do it. I select the blue one, that's it, and then hit select by colour, and then it selects all the blue ones, and that'll be throughout the whole project. And then once I'm done with it, I can change it back to whatever colour I would like. So that's a handy selection one, and again, I think that's in the Repack extensions. Sort items, I don't know what this one is. Sort items. I don't know how it sorts them. This is one I've not used for a long time. Okay, that didn't seem to do anything. I think that might be one where it sorts them by name. Let's try swapping these two over and see if they get switched back. Because that might happen. Yeah, okay, so that's a handy, that's really handy actually. Yeah, I used to have a completely different method for naming the samples, and that I used to use that auto sort thing, and I haven't used it for years, so I'd forgotten about that one, but that might come in handy. Add spectral peaks, we've seen that one, just adds the spectral peak. There we go. It's just a shortcut for wherever it is. Add spectral edit to item. And then I've got this one, group spectral, which will add a spectral edit to each item in a group. Again, that's just a standard action that I've assigned to a shortcut key. Copy envelope. I think this works with either pitch or that was the wrong button. Either pitch or volume envelope. So if I have an envelope like this, there's the pitch envelope, and I select copy envelope points, and then I click on another envelope, and I have this one paste. Yeah, it just copies and pastes it. I don't use that one very often now because I have the one that will copy it to grouped items anywhere, like I did for the volume. Toggle effects. I don't even know why I've got that one on. I never use it. But I'm guessing that just turns all the effects on and off. Let's add an effect and see what it does. Toggle effect. Oh, actually, yeah, I might have used this because you can add effects to individual items. I might have used it. There it is, show effects chain. I think I possibly used it for this. Let's see if it toggles the effect on. No, well, I don't know what it does. That's one to be deleted. Insert envelope. Oh yeah, I think that's what is that one? Let's add an envelope. Insert envelope. I don't know what that one does. Again, another one to be deleted. This pitch correction one I'll come to in a minute because that's a really great plugin, really great script, which I actually used extensively with the Woodwind library, and I'm probably not going to use it with this one because of that other tuning system that I've set up. But I'll show you that at the end because that's a bit more complicated. Copy pitch envelope, that just copies a pitch envelope to all the other items in the group. Works just like the well, it's meant to work like the other ones. What happened there? Copy pitch envelope. There we go. And it just copies it to the group. So it works like the volume envelope copying one. Copy spectral edit, we saw that one earlier. Paste spectral edit, we saw that one earlier. Clean up envelope points. Right, so this clean up envelope points goes along with this pitch correction one. And I haven't used this one for a couple of months, so I tend to forget things quite quickly. But let's see, so let's see if I've got any questions. Do you pitch inside Reaper or do you use Melodyne? Oh, you missed the beginning of the stream. So I discussed this right at the beginning of the stream, so you can watch the whole version of it when the recording goes up. But basically, I tried Melodyne, doesn't fit into my workflow. Tried Auto-Tune, doesn't fit into my workflow. So I use Retune, or previously I used in the last project I used this thing which I'm about to show you, which is just using Reaper's pitch envelopes. But I've set up a retune thing, which which I think is going to work better. This is kind of my test for it before I do the rest of these brass instruments, because it was a bit complicated to set up. But as long as I don't get a lot of artifacting, I'm just going to stick with retune. And it uses the same algorithms that this pitch envelope thing is going to use anyway. So yeah, I'm going to hit this pitch correction one, and this is an envelope based pitch corrector, and again this was made for that sample company that I can't remember which one it was. And so you've got to activate the envelope, so that turns on the pitch envelope. And actually let's find a sample that's slightly out of tune, so that'll make this demonstration more useful. Oh no, it's fine, repeat questions, because I mean, that's the nature of the stream, isn't it? People are going to come in and out at different points, so it's fine to repeat a question because there'll be other people who've come in and don't know it either. But I just won't go into as much detail, that's all. So so that tuning is fine. Oh yeah, we already retuned all these samples. Duh. Okay, I'm going to show you this in another project because we've retuned all these samples, so it won't make much sense to show you in this one. Let's just go to... Oh yes, I do have another project I can demonstrate it in. So I'll just leave that where it is. And we'll have another project, and I'll have to reset up the audio in Reaper, but that won't take me a second. So okay, I've got a trumpet here. Let's have a look at this one. I don't think I've tuned this one. Okay, that's not a good example. Let's open the other French horn. Nope, don't have the other French horn done. Trumpet 2. Maybe this one's done. Yeah, okay, so as far as I'm aware, I didn't tune these samples. Yeah, I've got retune inserted in here, so yeah, these samples aren't tuned. I recorded some crescendo samples for this trumpet apparently, which you won't be able to hear. So let me just reconnect that up. Okay, now we should be able to. So these samples haven't been edited. I was just doing something with those crescendo ones in a little experiment. So we'll just cut out a sample from here that is in need of some tuning. That one's pretty good. Okay, this one needs tuning. So let's tune that sample. Let's tune that sample up. I'm on Linux Mint 19. How about Isotope RX? Can that do tuning? I haven't tried it for tuning. If it can, I've tried it for noise removal, but not tuning. So we'll go with this sample here, which is, let's just check in, yeah, no tuning enabled, and it's out of tune. It's not greatly out of tune actually, it's just the beginning. But it's enough to demonstrate. So we'll start with the close mic, so I've got it soloed. Can you all hear this? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to hit this pitch correction button and activate the envelope so we have the pitch envelope magically appears. Now what you can do, you can so I could tune this manually and just pull that down a bit. Right, and add in all the little points of tuning to get it perfectly in tune. And this plugin basically does the same thing. So it's auto tuning, but using an envelope. And there's another plugin you can use, which will actually it's a paid plugin, and I haven't used it, but it extracts these envelope points to the rate, so it'll change the playback rate, and that avoids some artifact issues that can occur. Right, so let's see. I think just click. I haven't used it for a while. Oh, yeah. So you set the threshold to how many cents either side of correct pitch you want, and if you want it correct pitch, you put it at 0. The force is strong with you. The force is like the intensity of the plugin. Just increase that and play around with that. The shape is the shape of the points. So I think it's like a curved one somewhere. Fast start, fast end, Bezier. There you go. So that's for your curve. I found that doesn't make too much difference. And interval is, I think that's the distance between the points, although that doesn't look like it should be. I don't know. But I seem to remember reducing that greatly when tuning staccato samples. You can also set it to a target note if you want, but I find that doesn't work, so I just let it do it automatically. So let's see what it came up with. Oh, I'll click process envelope. There we go. So the problem I found with this plugin is the beginning is always wrong and the end is always wrong. So I got this other plugin, cleanup envelope, and again this might be by the same guy, but I think it's a free one, and or maybe I scripted this. But anyway, you just enter in the number of envelope points you want to take off from the end and from the beginning. But as you can see, it's not that great, and you've got to fiddle around with it quite a lot. I used it for my woodwind library, and it did the job okay, but I found I started to do a lot of manual tweaking. Yeah, that's a pretty good result. I've just pulled the force down on it there. And then once I've done it for the close mic, I'll just hit the button to copy pitch envelope, and now it's done for all mics. And I'm hearing a few little artifacts in there. I don't know if you're picking those up as well. There's one there, and I reckon that's because these are not optimized for tonal content, so hopefully that will get rid of those artifacts. It's not perfect, I'm still hearing something towards the end there. It's just on the hall mic, so I'd play around with that some more and try and get that sounding perfect. But yeah, I'm hoping my other tuning method that I demonstrated at the beginning will eliminate most of my need for doing stuff with the pitch envelopes. But the pitch envelopes are great if you need a lot of accuracy. And I'll still have to do some tweaking with them, but yeah, I'm hoping the majority of it now can be done automatically, which will save me a lot of time, because those woodwinds took weeks to edit, and I re-edited some of them because I wasn't happy with the results, so I started from scratch. And yeah, it was mainly things to do with tuning and those key clicks at the end. But tuning is the big one. Once you get that right, it's everything else sort of falls into place. And it's not such a problem with single mic position instruments, or where all the mics are close, because then you don't have to worry so much about phase and whatnot. So I've always just used retune for those anyway. But yeah, the thing I set up to tune everything to the close mics, I'm hoping that will solve the problem for all my future projects and make it much easier for me to make it faster for me to edit my libraries. Okay then, so we exported some samples. Let's have a listen to those in highs quickly. Well, I'm not expecting them to sound pretty good because we didn't really spend that much time editing them yet. There's a lot more work to do with them. And this is where all the work is. It's all in editing. But we can still load them up in highs. Check the audio settings. So hopefully we'll get playback. I'll just do a little test. Our friend the sine wave generator. That should be coming through. Let me know if you can hear that. Well, I'll assume you can. It's the problem with the live stream delay. Right, so I've added a sampler, and I'm just going to drag all these samples in. I've only got one dynamic, so that makes things quite easy. Single key, yep. That one to ignore. Okay, so all the samples are mapped. Just going to merge them into a multi-mic sample. I've got another video dedicated to this subject, so I'm not going to go into details about this unless you really want me to. I always just unload them all and then reload them because sometimes it goes a bit glitchy. And just make sure the envelope, let's have a nice release. Okay, so that's the samples mapped in highs, all the multi-mics mapped, done. Oh, that's loud. Oh yeah, we haven't had a volume curve of any kind. So there's they don't sound too bad actually. We can add the little legato script. This is just a sort of synth legato, just the one that comes with highs. It's not the one I use in my instruments, but actually mine's similar to this. I hear signs. That's good, because it was a sine wave generator. That sounds good. At the beginning of some of these notes, I'm hearing some horrible tuning issues. If you remember, in the retune instances we used, we set the attack to 100 milliseconds, so maybe shortening that will get rid of some of these issues with the beginnings of the samples being out of tune, so I'll experiment with that. The only problem with shortening the attack of retune is there's a higher chance of artifacts being introduced further into the samples, but it's something I'll play around with. But if not, I'll just tune them manually, which is not pleasant, but it's necessary because I make these sample libraries for my own use primarily, so I want them to be as good as they can be, and obviously that benefits everybody else who uses them as well. So I will just open up that session I had for the clarinets, I think it was. No, for the English horn. So here you can see all the tuning I did, all these pitch envelopes and all the envelope points. Now these were all done using that little plugin and then manually tweaked and adjusted until it sounded just right. And you can see the regions here as well for all the loop points. And I think I did quite a lot of spectral editing. Let's see, spectrogram. Maybe it wasn't on this, maybe it was on the oboes. So once I've got the sustains exported, I'd then make another project where I'd import the sustains, and this has got missing files, so that's not a good example. No. I think I might have come across a very rare event, which is a crash in Reaper. Oh, no, that's good. I've only had about 4 crashes in Reaper ever. Okay, so we'll have a look at the oboe. It might be in here. Yeah, so these ones you can see are full of spectral edits on pretty much every single one. Mostly on the close mic, there's another spectral edit. There's another spectral edit, and it was these horrible key clicks at the end which I didn't want. So yeah, loads of spectral editing. The 2 oboes took ages to edit. And then I make another project for the release triggers, and this one's missing as well. I'll have to do the search thing. Okay. Alright, I will do it. Oh, I know why. I know what the problem is. I formatted my computer, and when I reinstalled my OS, I changed the name of one of my drives, so it mounts under a different name. And yeah, I had this problem before. None of my files were found. I had to manually refine them. Okay, and I can't be bothered doing that now. So I will just show you quickly. Imagine these are the sustain samples, which is what they are, and then say they can go much longer than this. These are actually the sustain samples, and then I just trim the releases off. So I have these separate, and I take these from the exported sustains so that they're normalized to the same amount. So I export the sustains, put them in here, and chop the releases. And then if I have to re-edit the sustains, I just reopen this, and usually it'll find the new exported sustain files because they'll have the same file name, and it'll just update these automatically, and all I have to do is re-export. But yeah, I need to fix that. It's been a while since I've opened these projects. Alright guys, well, I can't think of much else to blather on about, but do you have any questions? Do you have a problem with the manual mode? In Retune, are you talking about, or in Melodyne? I do use the manual mode in Retune sometimes. I used to use that all the time. Let's see if I can see if I've got a project where I did that. I think maybe for my harp library I did that. No, not that one. Yeah, so this one I might have done manually. Let's see. Yeah, so this one I did tune manually. You can this I did a few years ago. So this one was tuned manually, and then I copied it across to each of the retunes. And you can see this is the first time I experimented with that setup, and so I only had 5 channels for that. And this was not a sustaining instrument, this was a harp, so it was quite different to deal with, and I hadn't tried it since until today. I basically copied this project and just modified it for today. But yeah, so I have used manual mode in retune. Yeah, so yeah, I do use that, and I may end up using that with this French horn library, but I was just trying to find an automatic way if I could. And I think what I did with this, somebody told me a trick, because the problem I had was if you use manual mode in this one and then you copy retune to another track, you lose all the pitch adjustment you've made. But instead of copying retune to another track, you instead just copy the audio to the track with retune on it. I'll show you what I mean. Just create a new project. No, I don't want to say that. I'll just pull in some audio, it doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, that'll do, whatever. So, put that at the beginning. So, let's imagine I have 2 mic positions, and let's imagine they've both got the same section of audio on, but imagine these are 2 different mic positions. Obviously, I've just duplicated the file. So you add retune somewhere, and you go to manual correction, and you do update, so it'll read in the pitch and it draws in the pitch. And oh, that shows some terrible samples for this example. Let's try a different one. Yeah, let's try this one. It's a single note. Oh, I know. Oh no, I don't want to play them back. Single track. Okay. So clear that, hit update, and it's trying to find the pitches. Set this up to my preferred settings. Okay. Okay, so whatever, let's just draw a bit. There we go. So I don't know what that came out as. Let's just. You can't hear this, I've just realised. Now you can. I'm going to find a better system for that. Okay, so this should be D sharp, C sharp 1. So I'll draw it in there like that. So now it'll tune it to C sharp 1. So now if I copy retune to the other channel, I'm going to go into the mixer mode here. So if I copy retune across, it does keep it. Maybe that's a new thing, because I'm sure before it didn't keep this. Oh no, I know what it was. Yeah, it doesn't keep the waveform that it's checked. So it won't be tuning according to this red line. It'll now tune it according to the red line from this channel. So that's no good, because I want them to all be tuned in accordance with the first mic position. So what I do instead, and I can't remember who told me this, but it was somebody on one of the Facebook groups suggested it. So what I'd do instead is I'd render this channel out, then just delete the audio out of it. Oh, I've got that turned on. Delete the audio out of it. And then I'd move this audio onto it and just make sure I disable that track pitch option. And now it will tune this one and it's not going to update these red lines. At least that was the idea. I didn't really test it out. Yeah, so it doesn't update the red line, so it still tunes it according to the other channel. So I may end up doing that. It's a little bit more work because I have to render one out and then move the audio. But if that works more accurately and has less artifacts, then I'll use that. But I'm hoping I can do it automatically. Right, I'm gonna sign off in a minute actually, but let's see what I've just got here. Will this video be available to watch at a later time? I've been wanting to learn more about highs and sample editing. Thank you for doing this, David. Yes, stream should be available on the channel. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it'll be available on YouTube. It should upload automatically. YouTube, I believe, just records it, and if it's less than 12 hours, it uploads it automatically. If the video is less than 12 hours long. But just in case, I've also recorded a backup. So yes, this will be uploaded. I haven't gone into much detail about highs, but we looked at highs briefly. I'll do another one of these streams sometime, and if you've got specific questions about highs, let me know in advance, and then if you can't make it to the live stream, I can still answer those questions. But does anybody have any quick questions now? Yeah, I'm pretty much self-taught in it and all this stuff. So self-taught is great, but it's still helpful to have somebody to give you a head start. But I think anybody doing this sort of thing, you're going to be self-taught because you're going to find your own ways to do everything. Like even the stuff I'm showing you, that customized toolbar, when you make your own toolbar, it'll be different to mine, just because you'll find a different workflow, and your samples will be different to mine, so you'll have different requirements and things like that. Yeah, you're all welcome. Thank you for showing up. I was happy I got 16 viewers. So I'd be grateful just for one viewer. Especially since this is my second YouTube channel and not many people know about this channel because I haven't had it for very long. But do any of you have any quick questions that you want me to answer, or shall we shut this thing down? Just let me know. And if you think of topics for other things sort of related to this that you want me to talk about in other live streams, let me know about that as well. Just send me a message or something. You can always find me on the forum, VI Control. I'm also on the soundboard. Highs questions, you're better off asking me on the Highs forum. And you can always leave comments on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, email. There's many ways to get in touch with me. And I have a contact form on my website as well. Okay guys, well, the stream has gone quiet. I'll just wait another 30 seconds for it to catch up in case there's any more questions. Yeah, don't forget to click like and subscribe, definitely, and hit the bell icon to get notifications. I never use that. I don't want to be notified, but you should hit the bell icon and be notified by me. But I never use it. Alright then guys, thanks for coming along, thanks for your questions, and hopefully you found something useful out of this. And once the video's up, please share it with your friends and anybody you think will like it, and I'll see you when we do the next one. Hopefully it won't be too long. Alright then. Work out how to turn this thing off now.